is, you know, there's a lot of change. We need to get used to that. Dead right, absolutely. But we must never forget that the vast majority of people who are attacked or murdered in the UK or around the world are actually men. You know, OK, other men are doing that. You know, it's a male-on-male thing. And that's another sort of reason to prove that men are toxic, because we're killers. And that's what the message we hear all the time is about the terrible things men do. What about the great things men can do? When do we ever hear about that? Where are the surveys to prove men are good? There's a survey out this week saying that if you smile at a woman, you're sexist. This got global media pickup. It's ridiculous. It's like everything we do is sexist, conniving, and part of some great...
Milo. Successes. I mean, of course, the great feminist academic Camille Paglia said if women around the world, we'd all be still living in grass huts. Oh. You know, we know what men have done. Men have got us to the moon. Men built the pyramids. Men built the internet. Men did lots of wonderful things. But you're right that, you know, what we tend to hear a lot is that what men bring to society is this sort of toxic masculinity, which was alluded to earlier, and all these other sort of ridiculous offences. It's now open season, particularly if you're white and you're a man, and what feminists don't seem to appreciate the irony of is that they are relentlessly ridiculing people on the basis of skin colour and sex, and they don't seem to get the irony there.
So, in a second, let's Sally first.
Well, I just think that you're completely misinterpreting the situation here. And with the issue of violence, we're talking about male and male violence. What I'm talking about with early childhood education is giving all of the possibilities to all children.
Not saying here are the pink toys for you, here are the toy soldiers for you. So how does it work?
Like let toys be toys. Well, I mean, many studies have shown that when they're babies, if a baby cries, a girl child will be picked up much more quickly and held and comforted for much longer. She's taught by her closeness to her carer that her feelings count, they matter, and she gets a reaction. Whereas boys, in every study, it shows they're encouraged to play further away, they're not picked up as quickly, they're not comforted. So it's not, you're going to be a princess and you're going to be a superhero. Yes, that's what it turns into. But even earlier than that, that's my point.
Yeah.
Boys' emotions are not listened to, and this is what causes the problems. Boys, there's not a toxic, natural masculinity. It's not the nature. We are teaching them to do that.
Teaching boys to be toxic.
To care.
You see, the problem is that this sort of view leads to absurdities we now have in the education system. In the US, for example, where boys are judged to this sort of emotional, sort of feminine standard, where we've all got to be sort of emotive and talk about our feelings. The consequences of that is 1 in 5 American boys put on Ritalin because they're boisterous in class, because they're held up to this sort of touchy-feely feminine standard that isn't how boys behave. And what happens is we end up with a generation of drugged-up young boys. And if you look at the statistics, the number of kids that are on Adderall and Ritalin, whatever, in the United States, and it's beginning to happen here, it's monstrous. And it comes from this sort of philosophy.
First of all, feminists did not invent the global big pharma industry. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But secondly, I think you're really confusing what feminists are saying. I think you're really failing to listen. When feminists are talking about masculinity in the way that, what I'm not saying is men are innately evil and awful. What I'm saying is that we live in a rather toxic culture where men are raised and told that they should be competitive and aggressive and detached from their emotions. And actually, this is wrong, and this is not doing men any favours or women any favours, and it ties in directly to the mental health issues that Martin is talking about with young men, and it ties in directly to the women being brutally murdered by their partners every week in Britain. And that's what we're challenging. It's not about attacking men, it's about challenging the culture that men are being dragged into and saying, you don't have to be a part of that, there are much better options for men.
Lynn, I thought you wanted to come in as we come towards the end. Of course, we've got to remember it's not just some women who are attacking sort of blokish blokes. Some blokish blokes feel some men are attacking them as well, and so on and so forth. Make your quick point.
Yes, no, it's interesting, isn't it? You said you were a stay-at-home dad for a while.
So yours is the last point, by
yes,
the way.
Indeed. While stay-at-home fathers are actually seen as progressive in this society. Hey, you're stay-at-home dad. Aren't you brilliant? Aren't you amazing? Aren't you doing a wonderful job? Yet if you're a stay-at-home mother, you're retrograde. According to Nick Clegg, we're in an Edwardian society. They're harping back to the Edwardian days. We're in rose sepia-tinted glasses just because you're a mother. So where's that? That's sexist.
That's all we have time for on that. And I think you brilliantly previewed our final...